Howdy everybody, this is Omar, your audio amigo, here with yet another episode of Thrifty Tunes for you. This tiny little set is the Kinera Celest Rue, released at the beginning of November 2024. This is the smallest and cheapest member of the Celest family, priced at a very wallet-friendly $13 with a microphone cable add-on costing an extra $1. This sports a 6mm single dynamic driver and is available in a wide selection of bright colors. Will the Rue make a splash in the sub $15 space? Let's find out. Starting off, as always, with the unboxing experience. As you would expect from a set that costs less than $15, the packaging and accessories are rather minimal. Inside, you get the IEMs themselves already attached to their cable. You get 3 sets of silicone ear tips. They look a bit like this. They have an interesting profile, small, medium, and large as usual. And that's it. Overall, no art cards, no nozzles, no fancy packaging, no modular cable, but I don't expect any of that in a set at this price. I think that this is just the right amount of accessories for a budget set. Let's take a closer look at this cable. I feel like this is right in line with what I expect at this price range. It's a flat 2-wire cable with, sort of 2 twisted conductors inside, which I think looks visually nicer than some other cables like this. The wire's insulation actually doesn't feel too bad. This cable is a lot nicer, honestly, than I expected at this price. It doesn't feel amazing in the hands, but it feels better than some other IEMs at this price point. It also doesn't have as much memory as I was expecting, and it actually wraps, half decently. The 3.5mm connector is a little see-through, no branding on it, and there is no chin slider, but I think that's because they also have this cable with a microphone. I do have a cable with a microphone. I'm going to give you a quick mic test here.
"People of Earth, your attention, please," a voice said, and it was wonderful. Wonderful, perfect quadraphonic sound with distortion levels so low as to make a brave man weep. "This is Prostentic Vogon Jeltz of the Galactic Hyperspace Planning Council," the voice continued. "As you will no doubt be aware, the plans for development of the outlying regions of the galaxy require the building of a hyperspatial express route through your star system, and regrettably, your planet is one of those scheduled for demolition. The process will take slightly less than 2 of your Earth minutes. Thank you."
So that's what the microphone sounds like. Overall, I feel like this cable is, I would say a bit above par for the cables that come included on IEMs at or around this price range. I think that it's not awful, which I think is something to say for something, like I said, under 15 bucks. Let's talk about the construction on these. The Rue is a all-resin shell with metal nozzles. According to the diagrams on their site, the nozzles and the driver are sort of a single cohesive unit. It's sort of like an all-in-one thing that they sort of just attach. You can see here on the side where the resin sort of thins out a little bit. You can see the nozzle driver unit sitting inside the shells. The metal filters have recessed filters that have a sort of geodesic triangle pattern cut into them, which I honestly think is kind of cool. There's no front vent on these IEMs, but there is a vent here on the side for the back volume. It's just kind of a hole. There's no damper or anything over these. I personally only experienced driver flex once or twice with these. There are reports online of people getting driver flex on these pretty regularly, so keep that in mind if you're interested in these. I personally didn't get any pressure issues, but again, since there's no front vent, you might have some. The connector on here is a ever so slightly recessed 2-pin connector. And other than that, and the sort of inlaid Celeste logo on the surface, yeah, these are pretty standard resin shells. Other than the obviously thin spots by the nozzle, I can't see any seams or points of weakness. I don't expect these to be the sturdiest things in the world, but I don't expect them to be brittle either. Real quick, however, I did mention earlier that I do have 2 of this set. I bring that up because it deals with quality control and quality assurance. I paid $26 for these. Reason for that is I ordered them the instant they went up. A few hours later, I got a message from Celeste on AliExpress. They told me, hey, the price on these is actually $13. You paid $26. We can refund you your order and you can replace it, or we will send you a second set. And I said, you know what? Send me the extra set. It'll be fine. So yeah, they sent me this one and this one that has the microphone on the cable. I opened this one, did my first impressions listening, took notes, graphed this. It's been on my squig for a while. Time passed, time to script the review, pulled these out and started doing comparison listening with this set. And right away, I noticed something was wrong with the way this set sounded. Uh, the bass was gone, the treble was wonky. I was like, what the heck is happening? So I graphed this set, and this is the result. So yeah, something is definitely up with that right IEM, and the left IEM is also a bit wonky. It is not the cable. I swapped cables. Those measure well. These don't. I swapped the cable, same results. So it's definitely something up with the IEMs themselves. I did not message, and I will not message Celest for a refund or a replacement set, since I can still do the review. It's not a big deal. But it is something to keep an eye on if you're considering this set. Maybe consider ordering from a place that has a good return policy. So let's talk about the specifications here. As I mentioned before, these are powered by a single 6mm dynamic driver. This one has a titanium coating on the diaphragm for added rigidity. Kinera is claiming a 25% weight reduction over the shells on the Wavern Abyss. My numbers put the weight loss a little closer to 20%, but it's still a good amount of weight reduction over what I think is already a very lightweight IEM. The nozzles are the smallest in the Celest lineup, and that combined with the absolutely tiny shells should mean quite a comfortable fit, but again, we'll talk about that later. As far as drivability goes, surprisingly, this is the most difficult to drive IEM in my Celest collection. It's more difficult to drive than the Relentless and the Gumiho. Now, that doesn't mean it isn't easy to drive. The impedance is 16 ohms, sensitivity is 101. This was extremely easy to push with my Minidisc player and my older Sony Xperia phone, so I don't think a dongle is required for these, which is really good because I feel like a budget set that requires a dongle is kind of a non-starter. Moving on to the cool wall. The lemon drops are pretty plain looking, but the bright colors do help them stand out a little bit. These are the ones that are available. I'll pull the picture. I just wish there was a little bit more going on rather than just the plain old Kinera logo on the shells. But extra splash of color, a two-tone look would have been nice. Then again, I'm not really expecting a fancy design from a set like this. I'm going to put these in cool simply because they do offer a choice of colors, and that's not something that a bunch of IEMs under $15 do, but it's slightly closer to the line between bland and cool than some of the other stuff in cool. But let's see how the pastel colors of the Rue fare against the Council of Ladies. And we're off to a good start. 3 votes for yes, 1 meh, and 1 no from our now famously fastidious lady number 4. Those will translate into 2 compliments and 3 no compliments. So there's a small chance if you wear these, you'll get a compliment from a friend if you have these. Next, we'll see what color they would personally buy. It looks like it's a pretty even split amongst all 4 colors, with someone voting for pink giving it the slight lead. Now that we know what their favorite color is, let's check out their thoughts. So lemon drops is a common thought. Then we have a full color breakdown from one of them, and some overall love for the pastel colors. So good job, Kinera, making these visually appealing. Moving on to comfort, this is a pretty easy one. These shells are actually pretty tiny. I'm going to bring in real quick the ND Venus for comparison. You can see it's shorter, it's overall smaller, it's narrower, it's just overall really, really small by comparison to the ND Venus, which is a fairly standard small IEM shape that fits in a lot of people's ears. So yeah, these are very small. The nozzles are a good size. They weigh nothing. There's no wings, protrusions, or sharp edges on the design. These disappeared into my ears. I didn't feel that they were in at all. I was able to wear these all day with no comfort issues, and the same goes for my wife. One of the easiest passes on the Tiny Ears test since I think the Quiet C from Rose Technics. Yeah, these are the easiest pass on the Tiny Ears test since the Quiet C. She found these extremely easy to form and maintain a seal, and these have become her sort of beater IEMs when she doesn't want to risk hurting or losing her beloved Letschuer SO8s. Let's go ahead and get into how these sound. The first thing you notice, and the first thing we'll talk about, is the bass. There is a pretty big boost to both the sub and mid bass here. The bass, however, is not the best quality bass. You can tell this is a little 6mm driver, and it feels like it's struggling to produce the SPL necessary to get rumble, and it's lacking a decent amount of texture here. Lil Nas X's Industry Baby is lacking some of that rumbliness in the lower drops. It does render them, but it just feels like there should be more power, more gravitas, more punch. They come across soft and lacking in impact despite how prominent they are in the overall sound signature. The bass quantity is high, the bass quality is rather low. Bass guitars and kick drums are a bit better. The kick drum and the bass guitar in Jiro Inagaki's Painted Paradise is nice and prominent. The bass doesn't get lost in the mix, neither does the kick drum. Despite that, I still feel like the Rue is lacking some texture to the bass strings. The ringing, the plucking is a bit soft. The Rue is very bass forward, and there's a lot of bass energy down here, but it's just not very quality bass. I feel like the little driver here is struggling. The mid-range is definitely affected by the bass boost. David Bowie in Let's Dance, his lower notes are pleasantly enhanced, a bit gravelier than normal, but his higher, breathier notes feel a bit muted and pulled down by the bass boost. Instruments overall are kind of veiled, at least that's how it sounded to me. It isn't the worst I've heard in terms of instruments, but you can definitely tell that there's some masking going on with the horns and guitars in this track. Female vocals are affected by the bass boost. Minami's Kawaki wo Ameku, for example. When she digs deep and her voice gets low and gravelly, again, it works well. But when she jumps up in pitch, the tonality adopts a darker sheen to it, and the replay loses some of its impact in the more intense, vocal moments. This isn't the greatest mid-range presentation in the world. It isn't awful. It will definitely color your music. Low male vocals and lower instruments will benefit. Female vocals and some more higher pitched instruments will suffer. Next up, we have the upper mids and the treble, and keeping with the warmer tonality we've had so far, the upper mids and treble are similarly relaxed. There is enough energy here to attempt to balance out the bass, and it kind of works. I feel like the percussion still has a bit of a veil over it. Phil Collins' Son of Man, for example. The trailing edges of the drums and the harmonics on the keys and guitar feel soft. Again, they feel sort of veiled. It's fantastic if you're treble sensitive or if you're a high volume listener, because you can sort of solve this issue with just more volume. Female vocal harmonics, I actually think, are pretty good on this set. Henri's sustained notes in I Can't Stop the Loneliness have just the right amount of energy, and I don't feel like they decay too quickly or too slowly. I think it's just right. Overall, the treble isn't bad. The cymbals and some harmonics are a bit veiled, but the female vocal harmonics are overall nice. It's obvious that the upper mids and treble also aren't the focus of this tuning. It's honestly just fine. As far as technicalities go, the echo in the left ear at the start of Steely Dan's Black Cow is there, but the sort of wobbliness and the detail that should be there is a bit softened. As I mentioned earlier, I really think this little driver is struggling to generate the texture to match the level of the bass it's outputting. Some instruments and percussion are still veiled in the mid-range. John Williams' The Map Room, for example. I really have to try to hear the harp at the beginning and later in some of the quieter passages, and while it is there, I feel like it's sort of hiding behind the cello and the bass. Overall, I would not say this is a technical beast. It isn't outright lacking, especially considering the price, but I would say that compared to other things in this price range, it's maybe a little bit below average. Stereo separation is actually quite well done. Mediterranean Sundance was separated enough to where the guitarists didn't step on each other. The replay didn't come off as overly claustrophobic. It wasn't as wide as some of the wider sounding sets in this price range, but it wasn't closed in. In terms of perceived 3D soundstage, I would say this set will do what the track is asking of it and nothing more. Bill Evans' Waltz for Debbie, for example. The tuning here gives you enough space to place the band members around you, piano to the back right, bass to the back left, the drums sort of slightly ahead of you and a bit to the left. I would say this set does what I expect it to do at this price range with this driver. I don't feel it's really any better than other sets at this price point, but it also isn't really substantially worse than other sets at this price point. So, comparisons. The Rue comes off as a warm, bassy, sort of relaxing sound signature. It isn't really similar to the EDC Pro. That's got more of a V-shape, less bass, more treble. Same goes for the CCA CRA. Again, more bass, less bass, more treble, more V-shaped tuning. The KZ Evangelion Libra X is a brighter, tonality, not really a good match for this set. Same goes for the brighter sounding Quark 2. There are two sets sort of in and around this price range that I feel are a good match for this, so we'll go ahead and get started with those. So first off, the set that comes to my mind immediately when you say budget warm tuned set is the QKZ X HBB, priced at $20 US. This sports a larger driver and costs $7 more. Because it costs 50% more, I would definitely expect the QKZ to be the better overall set, and that's exactly how it comes across to me in my testing. The bass is tighter, more accurate, has better texture. While the mids and vocals are still sort of, warmed up by the bass, it doesn't have the same level of veil over the instruments and vocals that the Rue has. The cymbal harmonics are also better on this. The shells are larger and heavier. It's got those metal caps on it. So if you have tiny ears or you're sensitive to heavier IEMs, the Rue might be the better choice. But outside of comfort, the QKZ is definitely worth the extra money. I will say, though, I prefer the cable on the Rue to the QKZ. Next up, and honestly the bigger problem for the Rue in terms of competitiveness, is the mini QKZ XHBB, the ND Venus, priced at $4 less than the Rue at $9 US. The Rue honestly just does not stack up well versus the Venus. It might be the driver, it might be the shell design, but again, the bass on the Venus is just tighter, more accurate, and has better overall texture. The mids, again, also warmed up, but again, the veil over the instruments is not as prevalent as on the Rue. Again, I feel like the Venus is overall the better performer in terms of sound quality. The harmonics on the percussion are also better done than on the Rue. Like with the QKZ XHBB, I think the only reason you would get the Rue over the Venus is because the shells are smaller and it fits people with tiny ears better. But the Venus is 100% the better value. I prefer the cable. It's $4 less. It's just the better value. To sum up here, the Rue unfortunately comes third in the three-horse race here. The $13 Rue not only loses to the $20 QKZX HBB, I think it's definitely worth the extra $7 for this, but it also loses to the cheaper $9 ND Venus. As I said, the Rue's only win might be in terms of comfort. The larger, more traditionally shaped shells on these two might not be as comfortable in smaller ears as this tiny little thing, but outside of that, the other two are just better buys. So with that opinion kind of spoiled, it's time to see where the Kinera Celest Rue ends up on the Audio Amigo Arbitrary rating scale. On the bright side, these are comfortable, they look quite nice, and they come with a pretty decent cable for the price range. On the not so good side, they're beaten in terms of overall sound quality by an IEM that costs $4 less. As my second set shows, the quality control might not be the best, and the sound overall I would consider quite veiled. Considering the fact that the Venus is sitting at "but I like this," I think it's fair to put the Rue in meh. While the sound quality isn't straight up awful, the veil over most of the percussion and some of the instrument harmonics just makes it fall down a bit overall. The fact I got sent a bad unit, honestly, also knocks it down a notch, so meh is where it will end up. So, do I recommend the Kinera Celest Rue? No, I don't. Not when the ND Venus exists at $9. It's just straight up and better in every way. Better cable, better sound, slightly better design. It also comes in colors. I really can't recommend these at all, even if they go on sale to match the Venus, unless you have absolutely tiny, tiny ears and you have problems fitting sort of normally shaped IEMs in your ears. The Rue's very lightweight and tiny shells are their best and only asset. So, I mean, yeah, if you have extremely small ears, maybe you've tried IEMs before and you haven't been able to find a pair that actually fits in your ears, sure, grab a set of these on sale from a store with a good, easy returns policy. See if they fit you, and if not, then send them back. And that's going to do it for this one. Yeah, the Rue. They look rather nice, but it seems to me they're more about style than substance, at least. Kinera has had a bunch of winners, but the Rue just doesn't do it for me. If you do have one of these, enjoy it. All that matters is how your gear sounds to your ears. So if you're enjoying this, keep enjoying it. It's a good looking set. This just isn't for me. But that's going to do it for me for now. I really appreciate your continued support. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Omar with Audio Amigo Reviews, and I'll catch y'all next time.